reflex resetting occurs during exercise. So I've sort of just topped right into my punchline here. Remember I said like it's a big problem that we need to increase blood pressure during exercise, and we've got the barrier reflex that's constantly like, no, do not increase blood pressure. So what we have is a resetting of the barrier reflex during exercise. I lost you in the last slide, here's where you need to kick back in, because this is very important. So this is what it actually looks like. So again, these are hypothetical data. Sorry about all the hypothetical data. So here's the curve I just showed you. So as you increase blood pressure here, as you increase blood pressure, you have a decrease in sympathetic nerve activity, and it's S-shaped, sigmoid shaped. And what you end up getting during exercise is a resetting upwards and to the right. So the whole curve shifts. And again, these are hypothetical data. So if we look at the effect of central command, it acts on the, let me just do this. Central command resets the barrier reflex over this way to the right by acting on the neural pool that receives the baroreceptor afferent, so in the brainstem. So central command is trying to increase your heart rate, parasympathetic withdrawal, but it's also sending little neurons down into the brainstem and going, hey, they're about to exercise, we need to reset the barrier reflex. And it resets it to the right so that they are less responsive to a given change in baroreceptor input. So now you can, we can have higher prevailing blood pressures and the same sympathetic outflow. Does that make sense? So it's nice. So now we can work at higher blood pressures. But the problem with that system is that, as this says, the vertically dashed arrow shows that any perturbation of pressure around, like, so whatever your original blood pressure was, it's poorly corrected. So if you're basically, if you're up at a high blood pressure, you're fine now. Everything's cool. You're at a higher blood pressure. But what happens if you experience low blood pressure? So me, when I'm really out of shape during hockey and my blood pressure starts to crash, now we fall on a really insensitive part of the curve. We're up at the plateau here. And so we really have I start to pass out, we really have nothing to do at that point. So what you end up doing, this is all very like teleological, but we also have an upwards resetting of the barrier reflex. And this comes from the muscle metaboreceptors, the muscle chemoreflex here, which through a vertical shift signals that muscle chemoreflex raises sympathetic nerve activity without changing the operating point because it acts on the efferent arm of the reflex. So the central command is going to act on the central component and on the neurons that are receiving the baroreceptor input. And then we're going to have a shift upwards to go to, so this is, central command to hang out at higher prevailing blood pressures, and the muscle chemoreflex, or the muscle metaboreflex, to sit at higher prevailing sympathetic nerve activity. So we basically bumped everything up. We go up to the right. Now you're exercising, you're going to sit at higher blood pressures and higher sympathetic nerve activity. Which is all to say, remember I said we might assume that the barrier reflex is shut down. The barrier reflex is still extremely functional. You can do the modified Oxford method on someone while they are exercising, and you still see this sigmoid. So the barrier reflex is definitely still functional. It's just reset upwards to let you exercise at a higher blood pressure. Okay, so once again, here's carotid sinus pressure, which is the same as basically like, here's carotid sinus pressure and here's mean arterial pressure. So at the level of carotid sinus pressure, so what the baroreceptors are detecting, and then our mean arterial pressure. So as carotid sinus pressure goes up, remember through our TPR, so pressure going up, the baroreceptors are sitting there, they're detecting that there's an increase in stretch. I'm not going to say it. You want me to say it all out? No, I'm going to say it wrong for sure. So we activate the sympathetic nervous system, we increase, oh my god, see, I said I shouldn't say it out loud. Pressure is going up with the baroreceptors, we've deactivated the sympathetic nervous system, we've decreased total peripheral resistance, so we've decreased mean arterial pressure. And like vice versa. Please don't make me say it again. It's too much. Here is our operating point. The operating point is the, I think I just have to go through this whole slide here. Thank you, sorry. Operating point is the point of maximum slope of the stimulus response curve. And as you can tell from the previous slide, we can make these figures a bunch of different ways, showing MSNA on this side. Right now, mean arterial pressure, and actually, sorry, you can see even on this slide, it says BP in brackets. So if you're not measuring the sympathetic nervous system, if you're not me with an electrode and the sympathetic nerve, you can measure BP, which is your sort of like analogous change. Does that make sense? Because that's what sympathetic is supposed to be doing, changing blood pressure. So the operating point, which is where you're sitting right now, you're all sitting at your operating point right now, is the point of maximum slope, or highest gain, of the stimulus response curve. And again, you want to sit at your maximum slope so that any small change in blood pressure, you can have a small change in blood pressure, it results in a big change in sympathetic activity and a big change in blood pressure to bring you back. And then feed forward and feed back mechanisms, which is what I showed you on the previous slide, the central command and the muscle metaboreflexes are going to reset the operating point upwards and to the right. So here, and this, it's going to be proportional in an exercise intensity dependent manner. So if you're doing light exercise, you're going to have a mild resetting of the baroreflex. It's going to bump up a little bit. If you do moderate exercise, you're going to have a bigger. If you're going to do high, you're going to have a bigger. Make sense? My last sentence was, if it's going to be high, you're going to have a bigger. If anyone wants to write down that quote. Okay. So arterial baroreflex, resetting creates a pressure error. So when the arterial baroreflex operating point is reset at the onset of exercise, there's suddenly a difference between the operating point and the prevailing or actual blood pressure, which hasn't changed. So if mean arterial pressure operating point increases from 100 to 120 at the onset of exercise, even though pressure remains at mean arterial pressure. What? It remains at 100 millimeters mercury because of pressure error. All right. So anyway, so we're increasing our pressure, and basically we're allowing the body to sit at these higher blood pressures and these higher sympathetic nerve activity. And the whole goal of this, going back to those models before, is really to increase that high energy component so you can shove blood to your active muscles. Does this make sense? I got 2 nods. I'm going on. How much more do we have left? Am I going to stress you out if I whip through the slides here? I can't remember what I have left. Oh yeah, we're going to have to go next day. Okay. Not too far. Does anyone need a brain break? We only have 20 minutes, so you can't really have a brain break. Okay. Sorry. I really was going to give you an actual break, but then I realized we couldn't do it. All right, so how do we know the baroreflex resetting occurs? So what you need to remember is that back in the 80s, people did not, they legit thought that the baroreflex got shut down, more of the 70s, but they thought that there was the baroreflex just got shut down during exercise. So then they did experiments like this one to figure out what the baroreflex is reset. So we've got dogs this time. We had cats last time. So dogs who with an intact baroreflex on the left. So going through this. Oh, sorry. No, I didn't need those points, but I'll leave them up there. So going through this, you exercise a dog. You've got them instrumented so you can measure their blood pressure. You can see as they increase, so they're running on a treadmill, I think, here. You've got an increase in heart rate as they increase between their intensities. So here's intensity at all these different percents of max. Increasing heart rate, increasing their cardiac output, and their arterial pressure is staying nice and constant here. It dipped a little bit at the beginning of exercise, but it's going up a little bit. But remember, this is really, really mild exercise. So I think this is mild to moderate exercise in this paper. But remember I said there's very little resetting of the baroreflex at light, and it increases with intensity. So their blood pressure is allowed to go up a little bit here, and it's going up even more here at this exercise here, but it's not going up too much. What they did on the right is they denervated the aortic baroreceptors, so no aortic baroreceptors, and they surgically isolated the carotid sinuses. I added a picture for this because I had to read that like 8 times. So boom, get rid of those. Well, they didn't get rid of them, but they cut their nerve activity. And then they surgically isolated the carotid sinuses so that they could control what the carotid sinus nerves were telling the brain the pressure was. And then they kept that at a constant level to reproduce resting baroreceptor afferent activity. So they basically tricked the carotid chemoreceptors into thinking that pressure had stayed at baseline levels. But remember, these dogs are still running around, and we still have central command, we still have the muscle mechanoreceptors, we still have the muscle metaboreceptors. So all of those things that reset baroreflex sensitivity are intact. Except for that, well, I lied, except for the baroreceptors. Okay, so in dogs with an isolated carotid sinus at a constant sinus pressure, carotid sinus pressure, the baroreceptors and the carotid sinus, cardiac output and heart rate rose normally, but the elevations in arterial blood pressure were extreme, and I was about to ask you why that would be, but it says it right here, due to extreme, intense vasoconstriction, even in the exercising muscles. So the sympathetic nerve activity went up. And what they concluded here, this is sort of like the main point of this, is that resting carotid sinus pressure must have been interpreted centrally as a progressively increasing hypotensive stimulus with each workload, which is evidence for the upwards resetting of the baroreflex during exercise. I'm going to stop there because I feel like, I'm not stop the lecture, sorry, don't pack up. I'm going to stop this slide here, but I would encourage you to work through this slide, looking at the last slide to get this, because I think I'm just going to repeat it over and over again. I'm very uneloquent today. But again, what we've done, the baroreflex was reset here, and we gave it the baroreflex normal. It was reset by exercise because the dogs, I just said I wasn't going to explain, but I'm still explaining. So the dogs are still exercising, so we have the resetting of the baroreflex centrally, and then when we give them this low pressure, the body's like, we got to increase our sympathetic nerve activity. So you get this huge increase in blood pressure. Shall I move on? Okay. Guys, I've been talking about how muscle blood flow is the sleeping giant for a couple lectures now, and I imagine my delight when I came across this slide this morning that I didn't even make. Oh my God, Dennis, what a guy. So, muscle blood flow is the sleeping giant, and I love this. Look at this. Okay. I hope this fight didn't actually happen. I've seen that picture before. So we're going to work through some math here. I don't want to stress you out, but this is Dennis. Sorry. We think in very different ways. Okay. So basically the whole point of this slide is that muscle blood flow is the sleeping giant of the body, because if you vasodilate all of the blood vessels and all of your skeletal muscle at once, you'll die. You won't die, but you'll pass right out. Okay. So exercising, here's some math. Exercising peak muscle blood flow capacity, 2 to 3 liters per minute per kilogram of active muscle at a blood pressure of 100 millimeters of mercury. Because, as you remember, blood flow is going to be dependent on what the blood pressure is and how many blood vessels there are, so how much muscle there is. An average 75 kilogram man, 30 to 35 kilograms of muscle. And if you have 15 kilograms of muscle active during stationary cycling exercise, sitting on a bike, your legs are active. So if you do the math here, you're welcome to double check Dennis's math. I did not. Oh no. You get 300 mils per minute per kg of muscle times 15 kilograms of muscle equals 45,000 mils per minute, 45 liters per minute. We've died. We're dead. I can no longer point at the screen to those people watching at home. Oh, I can. Okay. And then if we calculate peak vascular conductance, I'm really going through this because I don't know. If you guys love math, this is great for you. I really don't like math, so this is kind of terrible for me. Okay. So this is what the peak vascular conductance is within our exercising muscle. So let's go back to the 75 kilogram man that has 30 to 35 kilograms of muscle and 15 kg is active. He's got a peak cardiac output of, let's say, 25 liters per minute. Peak, obviously not at rest, peak. And basically, so we've got 25 liters per minute here, and 450 mils per minute per millimeter mercury, which is a problem because we now have an imbalance, which he shows here. So if you substitute in the peak values, 25,000 mils per minute divided by 450 mils per minute per millimeter mercury equals 55 millimeters mercury, which is his way of saying that this, if you vasodilate without any vasoconstriction, this muscle mass, you've dropped your blood pressure to 56 millimeters mercury. That was such a boring. Did anyone really enjoy that slide? I guess it gets the point across. Sorry, Dennis. He's not going to watch. He promised he'd never watch. Okay, but basically you get the point that like if you dilate your muscle, you're going to drop, if you dilate all your muscles without increasing or without decreasing your peripheral blood flow, then you're going to end up with a really, really low blood pressure. So your blood pressure is not going to be high enough to sustain exercise, much less, like this is mean arterial pressure of 56. That's a blood pressure of like, I don't know, like 65 over 30 or 40 or something like that. It's real low. And the conclusion of this is that exercising muscle blood flow must be functionally vasoconstricted to prevent arterial hypertension. So I like this slide, which shows so it shows that muscle blood flow increases a lot over oxygen uptake. So if you're down here at rest, muscle blood flow is the white here. Sorry, it doesn't really look like anything, but muscle blood flow is here. You get your heart, brain. This is a nice old school figure. Your skin blood flow, your viscera, so your organs. I like when they call it viscera. So as you increase oxygen uptake, your muscle is taking out more and more of your cardiac output. And obviously cardiac output increases proportionally too. But basically, you've got a problem if, let's say like you're not even doing cycling, you're doing like whole body, like you're running around, or one of those like skiing elliptical, and you've got your whole body active. If you vasodilate every single one of those muscles, you're going to crash your blood pressure. And so you have to functionally vasoconstrict those muscles in order to maintain blood pressure. Does that make sense to everybody? Oh, Dennis's slide was good. Okay, so vascular conductance, controlled by two factors. On animation, let's do that again if anyone missed it. Top right corner. Oh, wait. Dennis made that for you guys. Okay, so you increase your sympathetic nerve activity. That's going to constrict the blood vessel. I think I put a thing in here. Yeah. So you have your sympathetic nerves that are releasing norepinephrine onto your adrenergic receptors. Don't worry about these intracellular messengers. But this causes, so this is your vascular smooth muscle. This causes contraction. So sympathetic nerve, we've seen the activity. This is in bursts per minute. I almost fell over. This is in bursts per minute. When the sympathetic nerve activity reaches the synapse, we release norepinephrine into the synaptic cleft. It binds to the adrenergic receptors, which elicit contraction. Vascular smooth muscle cell contracts, causing the blood vessel to constrict. So an increase in sympathetic nerve activity constricts the blood vessel and decreases conductance, whereas a decrease in sympathetic nerve activity, I think he had an animation for that too. Oh wait. No, he doesn't have another one. Oh no, yeah, he does. Okay. Decrease in sympathetic activity allows the vessel to relax and increases conductance, so you got more blood flow through that artery. We've been talking about that kind of incessantly. Does everyone get that? We're cool. However, there are local factors associated with the exercising muscle, such as metabolites. So here we've got a muscle that's active, you can tell because it's shaking, and an arteriole feeding the exercise muscle. So as this muscle becomes active, you're going to have metabolites being produced, and those local factors are going to cause this blood vessel to dilate. And what determines how much blood flow you're going to get through any muscle in the body, and this is true for all exercise, is going to be the balance between vasodilation and vasoconstriction. So remember, especially to muscle, when we're talking about MSNA, so muscle sympathetic nerve activity, that's sort of a blanket response. So it's affecting both of your legs equally, regardless of if you're just doing like single leg exercise. So the sympathetic nervous system is just firing like crazy on all of your resistance vessels. What's different between a muscle bed that dilates versus one that doesn't is these local factors that are causing a local increase in blood flow. So it's weighing, every single muscle bed is, it's not really weighing, it's just what's happening. That you've got vasoconstriction coming top down from the sympathetic nervous system, you've got vasodilation coming from local factors, and however that balance plays out is going to determine whether you have more or less blood flow through a given vascular bed. So if you're doing hand grip exercise on your left side, and this arm is just staying, not doing anything, so you start exercising, you're going to get sympathetic nerve activity to both. So this one's sympathetic only, this one's got sympathetic plus local vasodilation. So you're going to have an increase in muscle blood flow here, and a decrease in muscle blood flow here, which is a redirecting of blood flow away from your inactive muscle beds because they don't need it right now, and towards the active bed. And when the vasodilator influences exceed the vasoconstrictor influences, so again, the local sort of metabolic and local vasodilator are greater than the vasoconstrictor, so sympathetic nerve activity, your vascular conductance is going to go up, which means your blood flow through that bed is going to go up, which is good. So because your muscle needs more blood, because it needs more oxygen, it needs more glucose, all that stuff. And people have called this sympatholysis, which, like, if you are super keen, you go back through the literature, you're going to see that this is a bit of a contentious term because at some points people were really stupid back in the 70s and 80s. I'm just kidding, they weren't stupid, they just didn't know what was going on. So they thought that maybe at a local level, something was happening to that sympathetic nerve activity, and the sympathetic nerve activity wasn't increasing to the active muscle. So now we more will call this a functional sympatholysis, because what it actually is two things fighting. So the sympathetic nervous system is still firing to that active muscle, but inside the blood vessel it's vasodilating. So it's not letting the sympathetic nerve activity constrict. Because what you get, well, a lot of board drawing today, this is bad. Because what you get, so here are your endothelial cells, here are your vascular smooth muscle cells, and obviously sympathetic activity is going here. And then locally are your metabolites. So this hasn't changed, your sympathetic nerve activity hasn't changed during sympatholysis, but you've just got more of these because these are acting on the vascular smooth muscle too to say vasodilate. And this is acting on the vascular smooth muscle to say vasoconstrict. And so then I'm probably really beleaguering this for no reason. But they're fighting with each other. And then whatever the balance of those two are going to determine whether blood flow goes up or down. And this sympatholysis, again, where the local factors offset what's happening with the sympathetic nervous system, is an important determinant of muscle blood flow and oxygen delivery. All right. We have like 2 slides left, but I think I'll leave them and I'll go back over this because this is pretty important and it leads nicely into next day anyway. Okay. See you Thursday.
I don't know.